Swallows arriving 2 weeks earlier to Britain. Is summer beginning sooner? The fast-flying visitor is touching down on British shores in spring 15 days earlier than in the 1960s. Along with other migratory birds, it is also spending an extra 2 weeks in our countryside before heading south to Africa for the winter. Swallows are not the only early birds. Great tits are resident in the UK, but they are laying eggs 11 days earlier than 40 years ago. The incredible shift in bird comings and goings is being put down to the way the changing climate has increased the average UK summer temperature by nearly 1 degree centigrade since the 1980s. This means swallows, which on average used to arrive around the middle of April, are now turning up at the end of March, flying in the face of the old adage, one swallow does not make a summer. Its close relative, the sand martin, is also turning up earlier in spring. Another impact of warmer weather is the substantial increase in species more associated with southern Europe, such as quail, little egret and Mediterranean gull, while experts are also anticipating the colonization of the continent's strangely named Zitting cisticola and little bittern. Other migratory species that once headed south from Central Europe to the Mediterranean and beyond, such as the blackcap and chiffchaff, are now heading to Britain to escape the colds of Germany, Poland and Scandinavia. Equally, other populations of these species that come to the UK to breed are spreading northwards, so that double the numbers are now breeding. Not all birds other are benefiting because thermometers are rising. Our feathered friends in the north, adapted to lives on mountain tops and tundra landscapes, are beginning to run out of space. The dotterel, whimbrel, common scoter and Slavonian grebe are identified as species that could become extinct in the UK as the Scottish climate becomes warmer and less suitable for these mountain and moorland specialists. Scientists are highlighting the impact rising temperatures are having on more than 200+ breeding species in the State of the UK's Birds 2017, SUCB, published today, and the summary of the latest results from bird surveys and monitoring studies. Its lead author Dr. Daniel Hayhoe said, "The State of the UK's Birds report this year compiles recent research showing that the UK's birds are being affected by a changing climate. For some species, climate change will provide opportunities to increase and expand provided the right habitat is there, while others will be vulnerable to projected changes in climate, increasing their risk of extinction as breeding species in the UK. Familiar species such as swallows and sand martins are changing their migratory behavior, distributions are changing and numbers of many generalist species are increasing." SUCB also details what might happen to some of our rarest birds if UK temperatures increase 3°C above pre-industrial times. Upland species with a high likelihood of extinction have been identified as purple sandpiper, whimbrel, snow bunting and dotterel, while Slavonian grebe, ruff, common scoter, pintail and marsh warbler could vanish from wetlands. Woodlands risk losing capercaillie, brambling, willowtit, redwing and parrot crossbill. Farmlands could see the turtle dove become extinct and leach's petrel and Arctic skews might disappear from our coasts. Dr. Michael Moorcroft, Principal Specialist Climate Change at Natural England said, "Climate change is undoubtedly going to be one of the greatest influences, both positive and negative, on the future status of birds and other biodiversity in England and the UK. In view of this, it is vital that we create the conditions that allow biodiversity to adapt to a changing climate over the coming decades. This should include establishing more resilient ecological networks across the country through better management and expansion of existing protected areas and wildlife habitats more generally across the wider countryside, with nature conservation working more at landscape scale. This will help species to better survive periods of extreme weather and facilitate their spread to newly suitable areas. It would also have wider benefits for people and the natural environment, for example, creating new wetland habitats at the coast and, in river floodplains, could greatly reduce the impacts of more frequent flood events resulting from climate change." SUCB is produced by a coalition of 3 organisations, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, RSPB, the British Trust for Ornithology, BTO, and the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, WWT, along with UK statutory nature conservation bodies, Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, Northern Ireland, DAERA, the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, JNCC, Natural England, NE, and Natural Resources Wales, NRW. Dr. Stuart Newson, Senior Research Ecologist at the British Trust for Ornithology, BTO, and lead author of the migration research highlighted in the report, said thanks to thousands of volunteers, many of whom have submitted observations to us over many decades, we have been able to show how birds like cuckoo, swallow and house martin have responded to a changing climate. The information provided has enabled us to see that some of our summer visitors are now arriving over 20 days earlier than they did in the 1960s. Ongoing monitoring is essential if we are to track the future effects of a changing climate on our bird,